Well, Mrs. Timorous faced Mercy, with her chin held high and her nostrils flaring. I see clearly that you have a mind to go a-fooling too. She shook her finger toward her neighbor. But be wise and listen to me. While we are out of danger, we are out. But when we are in, we are in. With that, Mrs. Timorous turned her back to them, walked out the door, and returned to her house. So Christiana busied herself in preparation for her journey. When Mrs. Timorous arrived home, she quickly sent for some of her neighbors, including Mrs. Bat's Eyes, Mrs. Inconsiderate, Mrs. Light Mind, and Mrs. Know Nothing. When they had all gathered at her house, she started to tell them the story of Christiana and her intended journey. She said, "Neighbors, having little to do this morning, I went to visit Christiana. When I came to the door, I knocked, as is our custom. She answered, 'If you come in God's name, come in.' It seemed a bit odd, but I went in thinking all was well. However, when I walked in, I found her preparing to leave town, along with her children. So I asked her what she was doing, and she told me in short that she had decided to go on pilgrimage, just like her husband had done. She also told me of a dream she had, and how the king of the country where her husband was had sent an inviting letter to come there. Mrs. Know Nothing asked, "Do you think she will go?" Mrs. Timorous let out a deep sigh and nodded. "Yes, she will go whatever comes. That's all there is to it. I think I knew it most of all when I tried to persuade her to stay at home by reminding her of all the trouble she was likely to meet with on the way. Instead of discouraging her, my great argument only encouraged her to move forward on her journey. For she told me in so many words that the bitter goes before the sweet. And because it does, it makes the sweet the sweeter." Mrs. Bat Eyes pursed her lips. "That blind and foolish woman! You mean to say she takes no warning from her husband's afflictions? For my part, I'd say that if he were here again, he would be content to relax here unharmed, and never to endure so many hazards for nothing." Mrs. Inconsiderate also replied, with a dismissive wave of her hand, "Away with such fanatical fools from the town, and good riddance. However, as far as I'm concerned, I think she should stay here where she lives. But who could bear to live by her? For she will either be dull and neighborly, or talk about matters nobody can put up with. Therefore, as far as I'm concerned, I will never be sorry to see her leave. Let her go, and let someone better come in her place. Let's face it, it has never been good since these whimsical fools have lived among us." Then Mrs. Light Mind joined in the conversation. Come, let us put this kind of talk behind us. Yesterday I spent the day at Madame Wanton's, where we were as merry as the maids. And who do you think should be there along with me but Mrs. Love the Flesh, and 3 or 4 more, with Mrs. Lettery, Mrs. Filth, and some others. So we enjoyed music and dancing and whatever else we could think of to give us pleasure. And I dare say that my lady herself is an admirable, well-bred gentlewoman, and Mr. Lettery is a handsome fellow.